And welcome back to what is now part three of my videos and talks on the legendary subject of the Amityville horror, and of course my book Pure Observation. And I want to just carry on with a few different points here, really, as in I want these things to be different. I want them to be, kind of new and interesting to people in different ways. And I do say this respectfully, but there are a lot of videos, a lot of documentaries, a lot of different things out there that tend to just go over the same old things. And it tends to be that someone is more or less reading from a script that, that they've got from somewhere. It's like, oh, this is the story, so now I'm telling the story. And with the greatest respect, I do see people making mistakes, getting details wrong and, kind of not really, giving it as it should be, not really looking at all angles and all sides. That works both ways, of course. Some will be selling it as a complete hoax, some will be selling it as completely true, according to the book and the movie. It can go to those extremes, which in itself is not great. Sometimes we have to really consider the grayer areas. So that's why I say I like to keep things different and interesting, and I like people to be proactive and feel that we're all learning something together, we're all evolving together with this whole thing, and nobody's coming along saying, "Oh, I've got all the answers. This is what it is." Because, as I've said before, none of us have all the answers. We just don't. That's what keeps us all intrigued, fascinated, and interested after all these years. So, just going back to the Facebook group that I mentioned before, the Real Amityville Horror, in which I am an admin, when I first joined that group, say it was probably a couple of years ago now, I went in thinking that I'd already got a fair knowledge and I knew a reasonably good amount about this subject, and very promptly found that, my knowledge was minuscule compared to some of these wonderful, interesting people who were already in this group. Some of them with, kind of greater connections. Some of them, we're very privileged to have in that group who were very connected to the people involved in the stories in the mid 70s. I'm not going to name names right now, but I'm going to say that that there's been some very privileged connections made there, and this is why I say we're always learning, we're always feeding off each other, we're always keen to move something forward and not just be retelling the same old stories in the same format over and over again. It's really, really good to go to different aspects, different parts of it, and consider, well, you know what? We haven't looked at this very much. Let's look at it now. And we can come up with some very interesting theories and even some high possibilities between us. This is what it's all about, being open and, willing to learn, willing to listen to what other people have got to say without, our own bias. So, that is all good. If you're watching this and you wish to join the group, it's called The Real Amityville Horror on Facebook. Okay, you'd be very, very welcome to join, but please check the rules. Please play the game. Yeah, please just, kind of come in, with an intention to be nice, to be kind, to be respectful to everyone. That's all we really ask there. Yeah. Okay, now the other thing that I feel is very important to consider, and this is kind of covered in the book as well, is just how many other real life hauntings, paranormal experiences, poltergeist activities, etc., etc., have been reported over the years and documented, maybe turned into books and films as well, and, very, very well sort of publicized. And what we tend to have is a lot of similarities in the way that the stories will be unique to one set of people, one person or one family, etc. As in, we could be talking about a family home that was pretty uninhabitable for one set of people and drove them out. And this led to an amazing, a terrifying and chilling story being told that really captured a lot of people. But then we'll hear of, well, someone else moved into that house afterwards and they never saw, felt, or experienced anything strange. Now, that is probably more common than we think. And it's not unknown for some to have these experiences and others not to observe or notice a single thing. And this is where we can probably even compare it to our own experiences if we really think about it, because there are numerous places around the world that are open to the public, open to visitors, that are notorious for being haunted. And we can go along to these places, sometimes we can just go and walk around. Sometimes there's organised tours of these places when there's a tour guide talking us through the story, the history, and each part of the location, etc. Now, it's very, very rare that anyone is going to go to these places and come away saying, wow, I saw loads of ghosts. Wow, I saw things flying through the air. Wow, I saw doors opening and closing by themselves. I heard footsteps upstairs when there was no one there. It's very, very rare that you're going to get anything close to that. Yet we don't get people walking away saying, well, I've wasted my money there, haven't I? I didn't see any ghosts. It's all fake. All the history and the stories, they're all a hoax. They're all nonsense because I didn't see anything. Yeah, we don't tend to do that. We kind of tend to realize that these things don't happen on demand, that entities, ghosts, whatever we're talking about, they don't come out to perform to a crowd. They don't come to put on a show for us on demand just like that. It is just kind of the way it is. And this is something that I feel is very poignant around the notorious house in Amityville, where we got a lot of people who say, well, people have lived there since and they've had no trouble, so that story was all fake. You get people who say, well, I've been there and I didn't see any ghosts, so it's all fake. Well, let's think about what I've just been talking about. These things don't appear on demand. These things are not always obvious. Now, with the Lutz family, if they'd have had bad feelings and, feelings of dread from the minute they walked into that house, the chances are they wouldn't have bought it, would they? Yeah? So these things can be deceptive and lure us into a false sense of security, and so just nipping in and out here and there, or you may go to visit that place for a few hours and think, well, I haven't seen anything, I didn't see any ghosts, yeah, so this must be all fake, that doesn't necessarily mean that the stories from the past are all made up. It just doesn't always work like that when it comes to the supernatural, the paranormal. These things defy logic. That's why they fascinate people, because it can have a massive impact on one lot of people and no one else sees anything else. It can be a short-lived thing. These are just theories and examples, of things that, really need to be considered. And I always feel that a very important thing to consider anyway with the famous house that we're talking about, people will say, I've been there and I didn't see any ghosts. Well, I'd always encourage them to then look at the Lutz story and consider how much of that story actually involved seeing ghosts. Very, very, very little, if you really, really think about it. It wasn't as straightforward as that. It was, something that went way beyond, seeing a few phantoms flying around and a few bumps in the night. It was not as simple as that, and like we say, sometimes these things will lead you into a false sense of security until you're there, you're feeling more settled, and then they'll start to work, yeah? For now, I'm going to leave you with something that's forthcoming. There is a podcast coming with an associate friend of mine in Chicago, and we're going to be producing a podcast that will be available for everyone to see, involving, I'm going to say, a very well-known and important name in the Amityville history, or we are very privileged to have on board. So I'll be keeping you updated with that in due course. Okay, for now, take care and many blessings.